Whenever anybody asks me to play, the interesting thing is I want to know what they like, but I also want to show them what they're going to be able to play after the first or second lesson. I played as a child, mainly because, of course, everybody had to do it. It was part of your education. And my mother played the piano. And when I was very, very little, I used to crawl around the floor. We had a grand piano. It was in New York City. And I used to watch her do the pedals, and she would be playing something all over the keyboard. And I was saying, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. But of course, I was much too little at that time anyway. And then, of course, it was Depression time then. We had the big Depression in 28, 29, 30, 31, and all through the 30s and 40s. So we had to keep moving. And we had to move, and we could not move the piano. It was too expensive. And also, we were moving to a smaller apartment. This is when I was 5 years old, but this is what I remember of it too. My mother finally got a piano that she bought at an auction someplace. And when we lived on the top floor, they had to take that piano and they had to raise it up, bring it up and up and up and up. And then they had to take the windows out in order to be able to get the piano into the apartment. I took lessons for about 6 or 7 years, played the piano very, very beautifully, but it was traditional, so all I did was play classical music. And it used to take me months to play it, and I loved it, but by the time I learned how to play it, I didn't like it as much, because you're practicing and practicing and playing all that kind of stuff. So my experience as a student was just the usual thing, where you're not happy with what you're doing. Well, that's always very funny, because it was never by plan. I never wanted to do that. I never even thought I had any inclination to do that. My interest came because I saw my mother playing, and then I saw all these other people playing. As you know, this is something I really like to do, but not as a profession. I just want to be able to have a party and play. I want to be able to do something and have fun. So it was just a career that developed by accident. I got married. After 5 years, I married a service. Somebody was in the service. We had kids. I wanted to have 5 kids, but I only had 4, and I wanted to have them 1, 2, 3, 4 really close together. And we were living in a suburb in Connecticut, and when my son turned 7 years old, it was like, where's the piano? We have to have music in the house. How could we not have music? And of course, my husband agreed with me, yeah, but it was expensive to get anything like that. And he kept saying, don't worry, we're going to get it. I said, but he's 7. He's 7 years old now. So my kids were 7, 6, and 5. I had 3 kids at that time. And one day he came up to me and he said, I almost bought you a piano. I went, oh yeah, wonderful. Oh no, my God, almost? That means he didn't get it. And so then he said, but I got you an organ. And I looked at him and said, you got what? I don't know how to play an organ. I don't know anything about an organ. Why did you get me an organ? But I thought you'd love it. I said, but I don't know how to do it. And he said, but you play the piano. You should be able to do it. Don't. If you don't like it, you can return it in 6 weeks. But you know, you can try it out and see what happens. 24 hours, I want to tell you. I was on that organ every single minute because I wanted to find out where you pushed and what you did. And I started to sound good. And so my kids started asking me, what are you doing? And so then I showed them something. And then they found, you know, they were doing it because I was learning at the same time that I was teaching them how to play the organ. I was learning to play the organ, but I knew music. So I was showing them things to do. And they were so curious that it was wonderful. But I didn't think I was a teacher. I had no idea I was a teacher. I didn't think I was teaching, but I was always doing that with my family. They started playing, and it turned out that they were playing Gershwin. They were playing Irving Berlin. I mean, these are all things that were very popular at the time. They knew so many things. They could play Glenn Miller's songs and stuff like that. And they're only 7, 6, and 5. People would hear them play and say, oh my God, your kids play so good. How did they ever learn how to play? And I said, well, they don't really play yet. I haven't found a teacher yet. He says, why do you need a teacher? They know how to play already. They're so good. I was on the school board in our town, South Windsor, and some of the people that I knew in the town, because I was very active, they said to me, your kids came and played. I can't even believe it. They're so good, and my kids have been taking lessons a year and 2 years, and they don't know how to play. And they said, you've got to teach my son how to play, or you've got to teach my daughter. And I said, I can't. I said, I'm not a teacher. And I thought you needed a license, actually, to be a teacher. And I said, I'm not a teacher. I don't care. If you can let my kids do what your kids do, even if it takes 2-3 years, I wouldn't care. Because your kids play beautifully. Okay, so that was a great thing. So I started out with one person. Then that person told somebody else. Before we knew it, I had so many people that I was teaching. And I found out that you didn't need a license, but usually they want your background. But the way you get your background is they see what you're doing. And if they see the results, that's the thing that matters. And I wanted everybody to be able to play like I did, where I discovered everything right away. And I had to rediscover it. It's like rediscovering music from another angle. And so it was just marvelous. So I had a lot of people there, and they wrote an article about what I did. And people were shocked, especially the music teachers. Because I think the title was Play Songs, Not Scales, was the title of the article. Well, I never told anybody not to play scales because I taught it to them. They just didn't have to play them like I had to do when I was taking lessons. And somebody who was in the music field got mad, called me up and said, "Who do you think you are teaching piano? And what do you mean by what's your education? What university did you go to and where did you play?" And I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "No." I said, "Actually, I do teach people, but I never studied to teach piano or organ or anything like that." And they said, "You mean what? You're self-taught?" And I said, "Well, kind of, but I mean, I knew how to play the piano." And they said, "Well, I just think it's just disgusting that you have this kind of a headline and you're putting everybody in the wrong position because, they say, don't play scales." This was the headline. I said, "Well, I never said that to the reporter." I said, "They assumed that. Don't play scales after they saw what I was doing. Because you're not. You don't have to play scales." And so then he said, "Oh, I don't know. I think that he was very nasty. It's the only nasty call I ever got in my whole career, and I've been teaching more than 55 years. So then I had gotten an invitation to the Connecticut Teachers Association. Well, I didn't know at the time, okay, but he turned out to be the president of the group that invited me. And of course, I knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted to be critical. They wanted to think, what are you, nuts? You don't teach like that. And how come you think you can do that? You can do that, but they're probably all talented. Or they're probably all geniuses to begin with. So anyway, when I went down to speak to when this guy called, the secretary called me up and said, "Hey, you know what? We feel so bad because I understand that the president of our company called you and was not very nice to you. And he says, I guess you don't want to come." I said, "Why wouldn't I want to come?" I said, "I'd love to come." And they said, "You really going to come?" And I said, "Of course, I have nothing to hide." I said, "I'd certainly like to share some stuff with you." And I got down and I started to talk to the group. And I knew the questions they had because it was mainly about the article. And so anyway, we had a very interesting session. They were very curious. They did understand what I was saying because I really turned the music teaching upside down. Instead of teaching you from the bottom up in levels like this, I was teaching people from the top down. So you knew how to play and then you could apply those things and you had tools to work with. In other words, now you knew what you had to do in order to be able to achieve what you needed to achieve. I gave them a piece of music and it was from the Carpenters. And they had just gotten their big hit and there was sheet music for it. So I took the sheet music, it was 5 pages long, and I made copies of it before I went there because I wanted them to see this music. But I only gave them something on the inside. They did not see the title and they did not know what they were playing. In other words, they had no idea about what they're playing. And I said, "Okay, now everybody here's a teacher, so come on up and just let's try it." And so they came up and they're playing everything perfectly, da 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 da, blah 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 blah. I'm talking about to the timing that's written in the music. They had no. I said, "Do you know what you're playing?" They said no. Then I got one guy that came up, and he sat down at the piano, and he started to play it. And he said, "Did he play it right?" And everybody said, "No, he didn't play it right." And I said, "How do you know that?" "Because he's not playing the right timing. They're triplets and blah blah blah." And so I said, "How come you're playing it that way?" I asked him. And he said, "Because isn't this a Carpenter song?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, Well, I was just playing it the way I heard it. Now, he was a teacher, but he was admitting that he was playing it the way he heard it. And everybody went, oh my goodness, that's crazy. But anyway, that was one of the biggest steps that I took, because at that point, everybody was trying to be critical. And then they would find out that I did have some worth. The president, the one that had called me, came over to me after the meeting, and he apologized. And he said, let me tell you, I am so sorry. I do know that you don't know something about music. Even though you didn't study it at a university, you have very, very big knowledge. You know, you're very knowledgeable when it comes to music, and you have a right idea about what you're doing. So I apologize to you. I'm amazed at what you do. The Dürr Discovery Method, I named it that because it's the sound approach to the why of music. So sound because it's intelligent, and we're doing it just from what we already know, the person who's studying it. And discovering music, again, if you've played before. And it's not my discovery, it's the student's discovery. That's why I call it the discovery method. But the sound approach has to do with you better listen, and we never give you anything you haven't heard before. Unless you're going to play it for somebody who hasn't heard it either. Then it's okay, because they can't be critical. And why would you want to play something that you never heard before? You know, there's so much to choose from. When you finish with all that, you can play anything you never heard. It's not that you're never going to be able to do that. So the Dürr discovery part is that. And I like to have an approach of family. And so I've always taught families too. And in other words, I don't just teach the kid. The kid's taking lessons, okay, and dad's paying for it. And there's two other kids that are younger. Guess what? The first one is taking lessons, hates it, and the other two are watching, and they don't care for it too much. But what would happen is they would have to wait. What happens when you're doing that is that you're denying the other kids the ability to do something together. And so I thought, it should really be families. And if we're going to be teaching families, it would be so much nicer if we could do it as a family. And, you know, they'll have different songs because they're not interested in the same thing. But I'll teach them to play duets. We'll teach them to read the notes. You'll probably appreciate more the way they play because they're going to be playing something immediately. And there are things that even the people who were educated musically didn't have any knowledge of. They never used the information. They learned it in school, but they didn't know how to use it. So I feel that I'm not really a teacher in the sense that most people would think me as a teacher. I'm really a coach. I was trying to analyze that the other day, and I was saying, I really am coaching people because I'm trying to get out what they know how to do to get the most out of what they already have. They've been listening to music, they have people that they like, there's music that they've heard it in different places, on different instruments, for different reasons. And each one of the persons, they're all different. It doesn't matter, they're just interested in playing. Now, if they're going to take too long, they're going to lose interest in today's world, which is one of the reasons today I'm so excited about what I'm doing and how I can help people, is that people are not thinking anymore. They don't think about they give you a list and you have to study this, and you have all of these other things that you've got to know, and this is a 16th note, but don't forget you have to have modes and you have to know this and that. And they're repeating the same thing that I teach people from the very beginning, except that we don't give them like the grammatical part of English to teach them English. And my philosophy is that this is a language. And having spoken two languages, it made it easier for me to really relate to that. My philosophy also is that people should not be playing and practicing 3 and 4 hours unless they want to be like an Olympic champion when you're a skater. Then you can do it for 4 and 5 hours. But if that's not your goal, you better know what your goal is. My goal is I want to be able to play when my friends come, they're going to go, wow. Or my goal is I really just want to be able to just play for myself. I never want to play in front of anybody, just for me. I want them to be them. What do you know? Oh, do you know your ABCs up to G? I can teach you. And most kids can't, so I can teach somebody who's 4 years old. I can teach somebody who's an adult, because they know how to do the alphabet until just the 7 letters. But I mean, it's amazing how much people really know already that they're bringing to this whole process. And so they're playing, and they play right away. They can play a song, they can play with both hands. Lots of times that might be a little difficult, but not terribly they can do it because I tell them they can. If they think they can't, they can't. To me, the legacy that I want to leave is really for my students, because they contributed as much to what I do as I did to them.